Okay, we're getting toward Christmas, and that means the NFL season is definitely coming into full view in ways both good and bad. Some teams, their season has come together in the way that they wanted it to. Some teams are out of it, and one team I did not expect to be in that latter group as we talk on December 13th is the Los Angeles Chargers. But here we are. News comes out yesterday. Justin Herbert is now on IR, out for the season after having finger surgery. The Chargers season is over. I thought Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers for us, did a really good job with his piece today, just talking about how the Chargers have found themselves in an unfamiliar place in the Brandon Staley era, and that's irrelevance. Even if there have been frustrating moments, even if they've fallen short of expectation at times, they've always been in the conversation. They were either playing for their playoff lives in Week 18 against the Raiders or playing in the playoffs last year, even if it ended horribly. And now we're not even midway through December, and their season is done. So in your mind, where does this Justin Herbert injury not only leave Justin Herbert, where does this leave the state of the Los Angeles Chargers right now?
Well, I mean, it's just they're going to have to start fresh, right? Like that's the number one thing to me. They're not relevant right now, and that's the biggest thing that I think. You go back and I'm like, man, that's right. That was 2 years ago that we were playing. We just needed to tie the Raiders in Las Vegas, and that was the craziest game. I think we completed like 8 fourth down, or we got 8 fourth down conversions in that game, some NFL record. And then last year put it together toward the end of the year, win a lot straight, and then we go to Jacksonville, lose that crazy game, and it did feel a little bit different from an outsider's perspective, but yet an insider. So I was like towing the line on both. Like, okay, how do I feel about the Chargers going into the season? Because I've been in there, I've seen it, and then try to step back, put the media cap on, and understand. Okay, well, and I was sort of mixed. I thought for sure with the hire of Kellen Moore that they were going to do better things, and that maybe finally in his third year at the helm, that Brandon Staley could fix that defense. And it just is not true at all. And it just hasn't happened. And that's probably the number one thing that Brandon Staley's going to regret, that a bunch of Chargers fans regret, is getting their hope up, right? Like time and time. This is different. It seems like it happens every single year. And look, with Justin, I think it's an interesting conversation, and one that with Justin, I just think that he needs a little bit of a reset. Like obviously, like when he broke his finger and he went in, like to the training room, like everyone knew that he was probably done for the season. Like when you have a finger injury, like first of all, he had one on his non-throwing hand, he played through, it just wasn't the same. And then he had this injury, and then he had a rib injury last year. It just seems like these little, I say little, they're really not little injuries, but these injuries that keep mounting up, like sort of take away from his greatness. And he hasn't really been himself since 2021. So that's 2 full years of going through, trying to fight through injuries, trying to make it right. And I think he played at times when he was healthy in this Kellen Moore style offense. Like I thought he played really well. And so that to me is the biggest thing, is just like take a step back. Like, look, I love Brandon Staley, but the chances of him being there next year are slim to none. And that's sort of the state, in my opinion, right now of Justin and the Chargers. And it's hard to watch because I know all those guys. Like, yeah, I sweated with those guys. We went to battle with those guys. We worked through a lot of stuff in that locker room, just like any other team would. And just like 2021, the way it ended, 2022, the way it ended with that playoff loss. And you're thinking, man, and Justin still doesn't have a playoff win. That's the biggest thing to me, that going into this probably new like head coaching search, that you're going to have someone that really gets the most out of Justin Herbert.
How would you categorize the first 4 years of Justin Herbert's career? Are you satisfied with them? Do you think they're disappointing from a team success perspective? All the guys that have gotten these top of the market quarterback deals over the last offseason or two, guys drafted in 2020, 2021. Think about those players. Joe Burrow has been to 2 AFC championship games and a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts went to the Super Bowl last year. Lamar Jackson has an MVP award. Justin Herbert's individual accolades and team accolades have never risen to that level. I think he's a very good quarterback, but I'm curious, as somebody who has seen this up close and is looking at both him and the Chargers from a bubble outside of what I'll call like football hipster internet, which I think is sometimes too insular and we can't
Yeah.
see beyond ourselves.
Yeah.
You may not be the right person to ask for perspective on this because you might be too close to it. But how would you characterize both who he is as a quarterback right now and how would you put into context what the first 4 years have looked like when you compare it to the other guys who we've no-brainer given those contracts to?
Yeah. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a disappointment, right? Because it's not. He won Rookie of the Year 2021, had a heck of a year under first-year offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, and then you look at the last 2 years. So half of his years in the NFL he's been hurt. Like he was a lot more injured and hurt than people like thought in 2022. That affected his play. Of course it did.
Is that its own problem though?
In what way?
If these guys if he's going to have lingering injuries that continue
Yeah.
to affect him, is that its own issue?
Well, I would say that I don't necessarily know if they're lingering in terms of like, it's not like he's not work because this dude works out like crazy. Like he's a workout
machine.
warrior.
He's absolutely shredded up. People do not appreciate that about him. Standing
Yes.
next to that guy, he's in
Dude.
insane shape.
He really is. So it's just a little bit, I call like either it, like you have a guy that always gets injured. Like, okay, cool. This isn't just, he's just a little bit of bad luck. Like a finger and then 2 fingers in the same year. And then just the way he landed in the KC game when he fractured his rib cartilage, like it didn't even look bad. Like it just looked like he landed and all of a sudden, and then that just turns into it. So I don't think that's a separate issue. But the biggest thing with Justin,
I tend to agree with you, by the way.
Yeah,
I think this is
yeah.
just a stretch of bad luck, which we've seen for other guys in the past.